Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Joining me today is Ceylan Ozbudak. She is a Turkish political analyst, television presenter, columnist at Arabiya, and also executive director of Building Bridges, an Istanbul-based NGO. It's really a pleasure to speak with you. You know, we've had so many stories over the last really several years, but also over the last year, out of the Middle East, out of Turkey, out of Syria, Egypt, of course. And I think for a lot of Americans, at least from the emails I get from our audience, there are not necessarily clear views about how much freedom there generally is in different countries in that part of the world. So starting first with what is closest to you, talk to us a little bit about the day-to-day political and media freedoms that exist or don't in Turkey.
If we're going to talk about Turkey first, then we can look at the issue of freedom in Turkey under two main points: freedom according to legislation and freedom in the practical life of Turks. Freedom in the lifestyle of Turks is almost limitless. Turkey is a Muslim country, but Turkish Muslims are both very devout and very progressive at the same time, allowing both women's rights and all democratic rights to be performed fully. And I can say 83% of the Turks self-proclaim to be religious Muslims, but the type of Islam Turks practice is not tainted by bigoted traditions which oppress others. So we are also led by a Muslim government, you know, but since the party came to power, we did not see any change in the liberal lifestyles of the Turkish people. No one is forced to adopt a certain lifestyle or a certain type of clothing, for example. I was never forced to wear a hijab, like many like to think about. And as a Muslim woman in Istanbul, I can safely say I have the same rights and the same treatment with an atheist or a Jewish man. On the contrary, we have become more liberal, and right now the number of women who continue their higher education is much more than the number of men in Turkey. And in terms of legislation, in terms of laws, Turkish government has been amending the constitution to be more liberal lately. And they provided more rights for the minorities and for the refugees, for women, and took new precautions to regulate the public life in a way to make Turkey even more liberal. And there were two legislations which were found to be limiting freedom. I'm sure you have already heard about them. One of them was the alcohol law, and the other one was the insult law. People, especially in the US, I heard often refer to these laws as Islamic laws. But that is really not the case, because the alcohol measure prohibits the retail selling of alcohol in shops between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., except in tourist areas.
When we here in the US were hearing about the possibility of military action in Syria, there was a range of opinions, but for the most part, Americans were against the U.S. taking military action in Syria. I'm curious, within Turkey, what was the popular opinion about the United States considering taking this action? In other words, was the consensus that Americans are, by sheer virtue of considering this action, unfairly appointing themselves the policemen of the world? Or was the view that actually maybe the US would be a good choice in terms of a country to help a humanitarian crisis? What was the view in Turkey of the possibility of military action in Syria?
Actually, David, it is a very broad issue, but first of all, I can say Turkey in the Middle East has never been an anti-American country. Turkish people have always been pro-American. After Iraq war, after Afghanistan, the Turkish look on America didn't change. You must also remember Turkey didn't take place in the interventions in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Somalia, but Turkish relations with America always stayed the same. But with Syria, Turkey in the first day when President Obama offered, said yes to military action. This was only because in Syria, in Syrian civil war, we already lost more than 100,000 people. And right now we are seeing a brutal regime who has been killing people in hundreds every day. So it has to be stopped. But we are also aware that it cannot be stopped by an American intervention, American Air Force intervention or something like that. We believe that it can be and it should be stopped by the Muslim countries, especially the Muslim countries in the Middle East, coming together for a peace force and intervening in Syria, because this will help prevent the further sectarian clashes within Syria. For example, if the Shia Muslims, if the Sunni Muslims, and for example, other people come together and form a total peace force and enter Syria like that with boots on the ground, that's very important.
So let's stop there for a second. Let's just stop there for a second, Ceylan. I am fascinated by this because you very astutely point out that Turkey has never been, has at least not recently, been an anti-American country, and on many issues there is agreement with many of the actions that the United States takes. It seems to me, and even in hearing you talk about boots on the ground and intervention, so on and so forth, it really seems to me that there is what by American standards would be considered somewhat of a neoconservative element that exists in Turkey that is, it seems, unique relative to other countries in the region. Do you agree with that, and where did that come from?
I can't say it's a neoconservative thing, because American neoconservatism is very, very different, almost the opposite of Turkish conservatism. Turkish, for example, if you look at Turkish center-right right now, which is ruling Turkey, the AK party, for example, is the opposite of American center, and American right or American center-right. In America, the liberal elements are within the left, but in Turkey, it's within the center-right. So, politically speaking, I cannot say this is a neoconservative outlook. This is a new approach in terms of neoconservatives in Turkey. But because Turkey has kinship ties, very much historical ties with Syria, Turkey wants this civil war over with. But Turkey, when offering this, doesn't want any more fight with a new intervention. Turkey doesn't want Muslim countries entering Syria and start killing all the elements in the Assad regime or the opposition and stopping it like that. Turkey wants it to be a peace force and stopping it like that. For example, if in Afghanistan, if you remember, Turkey sent 290 soldiers, and all of them came back without any harm. And if you look at the 2012 polls in Afghanistan, they say they are feeling closer to Turkey more than any other country in the world, even though Turkey sent soldiers as a peace force to Afghanistan. Because the approach while sending soldiers was to really keep the peace and stop the fighting, not to attack people over there. So this is going to be the same thing in Syria. Muslim soldiers, Muslim countries, and forming their alliance within a military outlook will not be going there to kill more people, but to stop the bloodshed. And it has to be stopped, of course. Everyone in Turkey wants it over with. We have more than 700,000 refugees right now in Turkey, 700,000 of them in Beirut, in many places in Lebanon. So, of course, this has to be stopped. But I'm not talking about a new war, but I'm talking about an action which will stop the war.
All right, Ceylan, I wish we had more time. I find this absolutely fascinating and hearing from you. Of course, we've been speaking with Ceylan Ozbudak. She is a Turkish political analyst, television presenter, also a columnist at Al Arabiya. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to having you back on the show again.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.